Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 937. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know what we do on race weekends.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do. And this weekend we're going to be talking about the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix from Imola. But before doing that, I reckon it's always good to go get my co-host, who's an actual professional driver, and bring him in and talk about it.
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
It's Paul, and I happen to know that Paul is fresh home, just off the airplane, ran from the airport all the way to the desk to fire up this podcast, and he's been down in Sebring. Paul, which is a good time, I think, to let listeners know or / viewers that if you didn't know, you got to go to our socials to find them. But if you didn't know, when Paul's going to these races, whether it's SRO like this weekend in Sebring or at Sonoma or Laguna, whatever it is, for IMSA, Paul's taking all of us on a track walk with him. And we get to walk the track with him. And he's been very, very generous with his time as he's walking around studying the tracks and measuring the bitumen and the oil levels and the asphalt and feeling it with his hands. And
Lots of that.
A lot of that, and scuffing it with his shoe, that kind of thing.
Lots of pointing.
Lots of pointing, yeah, a lot of that. But he's also taking video and telling us how to make it a fast lap around that circuit, and in particular he looks at different turns and walks you through how to take those turns. So
I try to pick out the key turns. I don't go each turn.
Yep.
I know some people used to like my little track talks that I did for the F1 stuff. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a time sucker. But so while I'm on there, some of these things apply to any track in the world. So hopefully, just how we look at them when we're on the track, we'll have to thank my cinematic crew of the Hannahs right here, because we were on the track walk, so they hold the camera and let me star for a little bit till they get to star on the track when they're behind the wheel. But
they're great.
Good fun. It's good stuff. Yeah,
it is. It's great, and there's been lots of views of them, and a lot of people. Great response for those. So you just go check our socials out, and you'll see when Paul has a race weekend, and when he sends those, I get those posted for everybody. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a tough week, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was. Tough weekend, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a tough weekend. It was really hot down there. Oh, my God, Sebring.
Yeah.
Usually we race in Sebring in March in IMSA, and for some reason SRO likes to race there in the peak of the heat of Florida or whatever. So, we had a mishap in testing with the Hannah's car, which is unfortunately a little damage happened, and not as bad as Yuki or Colapinto, mind you.
Right.
We were up pretty late trying to fixing it and got it going again. Then had London Mechanical, but they got it together. We all got it together for the races, and they did an awesome job. And Gray and Darren looking really good. It's just, man, sometimes races just don't go your way. But, so we had a brace of sevens. We had 4 races, and the Hannahs came 7th in both races, and so did Gray and Darren. So we keep pushing though. I think we're getting closer in competitiveness with both the cars. So I'm excited.
Yeah. So it's you can't win them all, Paul.
You don't, but you sure enough.
You want to,
try.
yeah. Or
you do want to.
You could be like Penske. You could put some trick crap on your car.
That's right. I should have got some filler and start filling in. Yeah, that might have helped us a little bit. I'm not sure.
It may have worked.
Yeah. So now the SROs kind of has a 2-month break. So it's all Valkyries and stuff for the next month or so.
Yeah,
including Le Mans, of course. But
of course, of course. So Paul managed to get the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix watched.
I did.
And he's sitting there in the middle seat on the coach flight home, watching it on his phone, trying to see what's going on.
People looking over.
Yeah. People looking over the seat. Oh, oh, look at that. Max in turn 1. Wow. It's Winner or Bennett.
It's funny, actually, because you're on a flight and you're watching Formula One, and it used to be like, what's that? And now people, it's just funny how it's become more popular, more people know exactly what you're looking at right now. You know,
It's got charisma now.
yeah.
Oh boy. Well, let's talk about
Yep.
the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. So what talking of talking, so what was everyone talking about? Let's do a little formation lap here, just talk about some of the focus areas that were leading into the race, the topics that most people were discussing. Certainly the championship battle, McLaren's dominance in Miami. It really boils down to, whoa, this season's is it gonna turn into a Piastri v Norris? Can Max make a comeback? Could Lando or Max take the fight to Oscar? Was Oscar, pretty much firmly have his foot on the neck of the championship? So lots of talking points about that particular three-way battle there for the sharp end of the championship. There was some team narrative, certainly Ferrari's hometown or home pressure, being in Italy. Lewis's first race for Ferrari in Italy. That marked a big thing. And then you got Mercedes' Kimi Antonelli, who's an Italian, his home, not too far away from the circuit. So it's his home race. A lot of those key storylines. A couple other milestone talking points. Sauber's 600 race, Red Bull's 400th. They even had Peter Sauber there.
Oh, nice.
In the garage. That was nice of him. I don't think he had a Churchill cigar he was smoking, but that became
not allowed anymore.
Yeah, maybe not, but that was synonymous with Peter Sauber on the wall.
Yeah.
And then the technical side of this, Pirelli was bringing their C6 tire, the softest compound on offer, to this race to spice up the show. There were a series, because this is the first race back and starts the European series. There was a lot of team upgrades that came to the car. Red Bull had some, Aston Martin had quite a few, and there was some talk about whether it's never really came into it to become a factor. It was pretty much dry and at least partly cloudy or sunny all weekend. Warmer on Sunday than it was the previous days. So the C6 thinking was, well, we go into this race, well, this super soft compound prompt or make the Imola Grand Prix into a two-stopper versus one, which it traditionally was. So all eyes were on that. And then a big talking point, Paul, really is the Alpine news and the team boss news heading into the weekend. Certainly Alpine's decision to promote Franco Colapinto over Jack Doohan into that seat starting at Imola. That was a major talking point. Grace and I talked about it last week. Then you had the move of the team principal, Ollie Oakes. He just suddenly departed the team and said it was a personal decision. There's other stories that are getting a little. I was seeing a lot of weird headlines out there about Ollie, his brother, and Mazepan and all this stuff. I don't know if any of that's true, but certainly that's all there. And then finally, unfortunately, Emma's uncertain future. Its contract expired in 2025. And a lot of discussions about Formula One not hosting more than one race in a country except for the U.S. And with Monza there and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Considering U.S. could barely get one race not so long ago.
No.
It's like, oh, you have three. Everyone else you don't get.
Yeah.
No, not for you, Italy. You've not really paid your dues yet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You haven't been around long enough.
Yeah, you need to. Yeah. It's a great track, though, isn't it?
It is.
I love the in-car shots of the drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a good flow to it. The drivers can attack or choose not to attack, and if you make a pass, you have to make that pass happen. It just doesn't get given to you. So I really enjoyed the flow and the challenges of each of these corners, and I think drivers do too. So
I did too.
If they don't go back there, really.
Yeah, it really would. I'm with you 100%. As a matter of fact, and I maybe buried my notes later on. But kudos to the F1 broadcast team, because their camera angles at this track were low, sort of at track level, and it really, really highlighted the speed of these cars. You don't often get that when it's kind of a bird's eye view. You don't necessarily see that. But at Imola, they kept the camera angles really low, and when Lewis or the Ferraris are flying through, or Red Bull, you could really get that sense. And even you could even get a better sense of the elevation changes of that track. It's got quite a bit of elevation change. And and I kept looking at that, Paul, and looking as you did, the onboards. Man, that whole complex going into Aqua Minerale just looks like a blast. Yes. It really does.
Yeah, it's and that's what we talk about on the track walks. Any little deviation from level really changes the attitude of a car, and really can be a challenging or an added bonus, and the teams just have to use that as best they can. So it always throws up a little different dynamic than just a flat track going around. The camera angles were really good. What do you think about the new one where they've got the big high up camera?
Oh, kind of like the drone shot.
Makes it look like the old video game we used to play when I was like a kid. We're just seeing everything up and down. But
kind of like the Atari.
It's interesting to look at, but as I say, it doesn't give you a sense of speed or anything at all.
No, it doesn't. I think those drone shots that are just directly above are kind of interesting into like hairpins and stuff.
Yeah,
because you can see the cars are going slower. You can see the lines, the different lines that they're taking, and that's kind of interesting. But I just really think for this race, for whatever reason, the way they had the camera placements really accentuated the speed of those cars and the elevation, which I thought was really interesting. I was just watching this race, and I was like, gosh, I've watched this track for years, but just this weekend, I do love this track for whatever reason.
Yeah. As I said, maybe they just nailed the camera angles, but it definitely gave everything its full worth, I think.
Yeah. It's got to be fun to jump in a car and take a spin around there. Yeah. That would be awesome. So let's jump into the race. We got a lot to cover. We're going to start at the sharp end with Red Bull. Max Verstappen finished in P1, took the victory. Yuki Tsunoda, teammate, in 10th. Starting with Max, snatched P1 from Piastri right at the beginning. Very good move on the outside at Tamburello. He called it a really nice moment. He, at this point, I got to think he had nothing to lose, right? He's got nothing to lose. And, I mean, he's going into the corner all elbows. And you knew he would.
Yeah, but it's nearly like how he does everything. I mean, everyone says, carte blanche, nothing to lose. Well, it's not. Yeah, but it's not hair on your fire, red mist time.
No,
it's Max is he. I mean, I think he did it in the moment where it wasn't a premeditated, because you can't really premeditate everything at the start of a race. You don't know what exactly going to happen, but he saw the opportunity and he took it with both hands and feet, obviously.
Yeah, Christian said it was kind of a win it or Bennett moment for him.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like,
it is, I don't like when people say that to some degree, because he doesn't bin it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like some people do. I'm going to go in there no matter hair on fire. I'm coming out there like.
It's not like Senna Prost.
I think he's in complete control of his car, and I think he knows what he can get away with, and he rarely makes a mistake, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, we'll talk about that move and kind of maybe how that transpired when we get to McLaren, because there's a couple thoughts I want to get your opinions on when we get there. So Max built up a 10-ish, 10 plus, somewhere around there, second lead, managed the tires really effectively, benefited from the virtual safety car. That was a free stop. That was, no one knew when that was going to happen, but it happened, and it totally benefited. He also benefited from the safety car. That got a free pit stop for fresh tires as well. So luck clearly on his side this weekend. And you could argue, on one hand, well, but we had the safety cars. He got free pit stops, fresh tires. That's kind of why he won. That could be the issue. Another thing to consider is, have Red Bull solved their race pace issues? Or is this just more of a track-specific impact?
Yeah, I don't think they've solved their issues, but I think Max is making up the the difference in between maybe what that car should be ultimately doing, but they've definitely got closer, and I think they're proving that they're much more consistent in their pace compared to McLaren and Max, as they can throw in his expertise to make up the difference and keep him in the hunt. That was kind of why I'm leaning towards, like, he's got nothing to lose. He does have something to lose because he can literally win the World Championship still.
Yeah,
So,
true. Yep.
You know, he had 25 points to lose, basically, if he'd have thrown it away.
Yep.
And I think what we're seeing here is that he definitely is still in there with the Drivers' Championship possibility. And so the McLaren boys need to, you know, get on with the job. From the manufacturer's side, it's a little different.
Yeah, true. And, you know, Christian said after the race, he said, you know, we're 100% focused on the Drivers' Championship. Constructors are not worried about it, but they're 100% focused on Max and the Drivers' Championship at this point, which is logical given the challenges they've had in the other car. Speaking of the other car, Yuki fought back from a pit lane start because they had to rebuild a whole new car. He crashed on Saturday.
Yeah.
And destroyed that car. Thankfully, he was okay. He went upside down, all four corners. Yeah, and you know, I'm glad he's okay. But man, hats off to that Red Bull team building a complete car effectively overnight.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that is
that's
amazing.
Insane.
Yeah, it's amazing. Once in the race, he did hold off Piastri briefly. That made Oscar's recovery a little lengthier, a little more difficult, which, you know, certainly helped Max out as well. He ran a long first stint, and then that allowed him to benefit from that free stop during the virtual safety car too. So this really benefited that track position, got him up into the hunt for a point. Otherwise, had he not had that, you know, I don't know that he would have got there. But yeah, he made it up, and you know, to be fair, yeah, he binned it. I mean, he just had that thing in a carbon fiber ball on Saturday. But the reality of it is, you know, once he got in the race, pretty measured race, made some decent passes, nothing crazy, and dragged a point out of it.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the crash itself is all to do with being Max's teammate, and you're trying to figure out what the hell can I do to get closer to Max.
Yeah,
and basically, you know, if you don't have these fingertips that Max has, you're going to have to take more risk. And he took more risk to try and get there, and didn't pan out.
Yeah. You got to be, it's a great point you make, Paul, because, you know, regardless of what the team would tell you, Paul, if you're that second driver in that seat, there's got to be something going to your mind. Is like, okay, so Max in my car, in the same car, Max just did a 1:15.4. I'm at a 1:16.1. You know, where is that time, and how can I get down to 1:15.3s, 1:15.4s?
Yeah, I mean, his struggle is, you know, he's fighting for his right to be in that seat.
Yeah.
And so every weekend he's being judged. We know how Red Bull team work.
Yeah, right.
Is he doing enough? Probably, because I don't think they've had great success no matter what they've done. And they're like, well, is it the driver? You know, it's, if we switch another one, we're just in the same ballpark. Are we better off going with Yuki? He's kind of getting the hang of it a little bit.
Yeah.
If I was them, I'd be like, well, we're just going to stick with Yuki and try and, because I don't think whatever you replace him with there's any guarantee of an improvement at all.
Well, one thing it solves for him, Paul, is it clearly galvanizes their focus for the rest of the season. It's Max, period. One car. They only got to worry about one car. Of course, they're running two. And, of course, the team on Yuki's side is going to do the absolute best and work their tails off. That's how they roll.
Yeah.
But the focus is 100% really on one car.
Right.
And the second car is there to try to hoover up points and benefit Max. I mean, there's, you know, they have the luxury of not being in McLaren's position right now.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
You'd rather be in McLaren's position, but yes.
You would, because, I mean, you know, as you say, support Max, you need Yuki to be in the mix to support Max. It doesn't have to be on Max's tail. I don't think anyone's going to be there this year.
Yeah.
But he needs to be in the mid of the top 10 rather than at the end of the top 10. And so, he's still got a lot of work to do, but I can see that the team will probably just kind of stick with it and try and figure out a way of doing it without it being a distraction for all their efforts being behind Max.
Yeah.
So just,
Yep, I agree with you. McLaren, speaking of, you got Lando Norris in P2, Oscar Piastri in P3. Lando overtook Russell for P3 early, stayed out longer, pitting just before the virtual safety car, so that was unfortunate timing. He did capitalize on that late safety car pit stop for fresh tires. That allowed him to pass Oscar for P2 in the closing laps. Lando said the result was better than expected, given his fourth place qualifying effort. And it is interesting comment after the race in the pin when he was talking, Paul. He said, look, I'm happy with my Sunday performances, all of them this year. I'm happy with those. It's Saturday that makes life difficult for me.
It is indeed. And we talked many times now how important that is, certainly not against the rest of the field, but just his teammate alone.
Right.
You can't let those tenths skip by. It's an interesting one for McLaren right now. I was thinking, is it more difficult or actually easier right now? Because they're playing nice enough. They're not bouncing off each other. And, their focus is the Manufacturers' Championship.
Yep.
Because, and wherever the Drivers' Championship, they'll wait on that for a while. Red Bull only have real one focus because they know they've only got a one-trick pony.
Right.
So they got to bounce it out a little bit, but do they ultimately don't need to care who's winning the battle of the teammates as long as they behave themselves, which they appear to be.
Right. Right. As evidenced when Lando passed Oscar,
Yeah, the difficulty there is making sure that the drivers aren't starting to wonder if these strategy calls, like pitting Piastri early, isn't a manipulation, which I don't believe it is. But
we've seen in the past
they're
where
very
drivers
competitive.
We've seen in the past where drivers start to get upset because they think the team is doing that. We've seen that when Toto, Lewis, and Nico Rosberg. We've seen Lewis make some allegations that maybe the team were doing certain calls that weren't benefiting him. And
it's not being in the team, you don't know the team structure of how they come up with their strategies. If they do it separately, they'll always merge on things on how the car's doing, what's the best direction to go on the setup, etc. But do they separate for their strategy calls?
Right.
And then obviously talk amongst each other as the race is going on to make sure things are staying good on track. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I would imagine they're doing their own calls, honestly.
Yeah.
The driver needs to be involved.
Yeah, right. Let's see. Oscar in P3 started from pole, but lost, and it just narrowly beat Max to pole. Lost the lead to Verstappen at turn 1 due to early braking. He said he just braked a little too early. One wonders if... So here's my question, Paul. On that pass in turn 1, do you think they knew Max was going in elbows out? No doubt about it. McLaren knows that. Oscar knows that. So they knew turn 1 was going to be an important thing. Do you think that they were looking at their race pace that they had in Miami, which was comprehensively better than Red Bull's? And do you think the conversation was, Oscar, look, don't wreck into Max at turn 1. All right. Just if he's there, let him go. We'll play the long game because we've got the race pace over Red Bull and there's no real reason to take your front wing off at turn 1. All right. You can't win it at turn 1, but you can certainly lose it. So if he's there, if he gets aggressive with you, whatever, make some room and we'll beat him in race pace in the long run. Do you think that's what it was?
Oh, I'm thinking that's part of it. That's definitely should be a part of a discussion point before any race.
Yeah.
You know who you're racing in close proximity to on the grid and the scenarios that you go through. I'm sure that was a point of conversation. But I think Oscar was, honestly, I think he was left sleeping a little bit. It would have been, for everyone's saying move of the race for Max, which it probably was, but also he had to have some help from Oscar, and Oscar certainly gave him that help. Even if he did break early, he even still gave him room on the outside as well. So I think Oscar probably thought Max was busy enough with Russell that he was already free and clear, but you can never underestimate the Max, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to make that mistake again.
Right.
But I think he was just maybe a bit too comfortable with where he was and where Max was at that point, not expecting him to come up that far, that deep. And it was a miraculously deep braking point for the first turn, considering where everyone else got on the brakes.
Yeah, right. He ran competitively in the top two, but the team boxed him early to cover Russell and then try to undercut Max. This left him really using a lot of tire, trying to get back up through traffic. You got to get back up through Sonoda and Behrman, Colapinto, and all these people. And by the time he got up, you use a lot of tire life trying to get back up there. The team also chose to leave him out instead of stacking the cars during the safety car. And this left Oscar on older tires. So despite gaining a position on Lando, he was always going to struggle on the older tires while Lando boxed for fresh tires. Lando got around him. I think in some sense, just me, this is totally me on the outside, and I could be off on this, but I think as much as we can appreciate how the team are favoring sort of two number one drivers and they're going about it, I think I've been watching F1 enough to know in the past that has always been kind of said, but it very rarely turns out that way. That we've got two number ones and it's equal. You kind of seen that. Toto did that with Nico and Lewis. That sort of thing, and it hasn't really worked. And maybe Zach can be the first team boss that ever makes it work. But for me, I get the impression from McLaren that the team are still too reticent on taking charge and taking the lead and maximizing their team race in favor of not hurting feelings. I think I know they got to be thinking, well, you can't do that because we've got two incredibly talented drivers. You do, but at this point, though, would you lose a driver if you started making team decisions and one driver suffers? Because maybe. But I also got to think that this team's been working with both these drivers long enough to know which horse they should attach their cart to in long term.
Ooh, I'm not sure they know that.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think it's too close to call. And
maybe.
I think they may have gone into it thinking, Lando, and Oscar's such a great backup, but Oscar's proving to be putting a lot of things in place to be, maybe the head runner right now. I don't think so. I think it's too tough to call, and I get what you're saying, but I think right now they have the luxury of being able to do that because their car's superior. If it was a tighter knit race where it's really, all the other teams are a lot closer. I mean, Max is kind of a bit of a spoiler for him. Then they'd have to maybe choose a bit more and point the strategy towards one person or next, but you do risk losing the other driver. I think Piastri would leave in a heartbeat if he thought he was being mistreated. And all his options would be open.
All of them,
You ask any team manager down the pit lane,
any one of them,
who they'd take.
Anyone.
I think they'd take Oscar.
Yeah,
right? And Oscar's would be the most likely to leave because of Lando's history with the McLaren team. So. They don't want to lose him. Not only you're losing Oscar, another team is gaining Oscar. Yeah, and that's definitely something they want to try and avoid.
Yeah, they don't want to race against him.
No.
Ferrari. You had Lewis Hamilton in P4, Charles Leclerc in P6. Ferrari split their strategies once again. Lewis started on the hards, Charles on the mediums. Lewis climbed from P12 to P4. Good recovery drive. Said he felt more at one with the car this weekend than he had in the past. He started on the hards. He benefited from that cheap virtual safety car pit stop and used fresh tires post-safety car to really overtake Leclerc late in the race. So they kind of avoided, because Leclerc kind of struggled with the same thing Oscar did, right? We'll get into that when we talk about Charles. But so that made it easier for Lewis to get around. They didn't really have that awkward team order sort of thing that they had to deal with. He struggled behind Antonelli for the first half of the race. I mean, Kimi was putting up a pretty good fight. But it almost seemed like to me, once that second half of that race came in and Lewis had the fresh tires, he was flying then. He was making up a lot of places, making up a lot of positions, and really I thought was, ran out of laps, but certainly had Oscar in a square, in the target. It was a good recovery drive from him.
It was. I mean, obviously the team put him back there, not getting in the top flight in qualifying, so that was unfortunate for him, but definitely a good comeback drive. And as I say, it's tough when you start in on that alternate strategy to protect those hards for that long to make the strategy work. And sometimes you have to suck up your ego a little bit because you're not being able to scythe your way through all the traffic and make big passes early on in the race. You're kind of biding your time, and he definitely did that, and that's just one of the skills that Hamilton's learned along the way. Yeah,
for sure. Sure, a little more difficult race for him. He undercut several cars with an early stop for mediums, and then briefly ran, or was it mediums? No.
We started on mediums.
You started on mediums, so it'd be hards, right? Maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah.
Briefly running ahead of Hamilton, but Lewis's cheap pit stop allowed him to get back around him. He lost out again into the safety car. He had no tires to switch to, so they kept him out while Lewis had another cheap stop on the safety car. So that kind of left Charles as a sitting duck a little bit. He even said on the radio, he said these tires, are going to be really, really difficult to restart. And I think he was right, but I think he did a pretty good job getting him back up to heat. He fought Albon in those closing laps. Albon ran wide under one passing attempt, and then the team told Charles to let Albon back, give the position back, which he did, and that dropped him down to P5 to avoid the risk. And Ferrari argued, look, we didn't know what the outcome of the stewards' investigation in this situation, but it was better to lose one position than get a 10-second penalty and lose multiple positions. So we felt that giving that one position back would make more sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think it did. I mean, the way the rules are right now, and it's difficult because the rules nearly need to be different for these quick left-right chicanes as they do for, like we had at Jeddah, right? Except in Jeddah they had a chance to actually drive off the road. Here you didn't. You drove into the gravel. It's nearly a different rule to me, to driving into a one-directional corner to a left-right corner, because you can't, you have to be somewhere. If you're the inside driver, you can't just literally move a whole car width over and give all that car width unless you're being very, very nice. So, I don't know. I think the rules were okay, and I think they were implemented right, and I think Ferrari made the correct choice.
The right choice.
Giving up the position.
Yeah.
I mean, it could, because everyone else was close enough behind that if they got a second, I think if they got that penalty, they would have lost even more position. So from their side, it was good.
I think that's what they decided. And look, I don't know, but maybe when Ferrari gave the position back, the stewards looked at it and said, well, he gave it back, so there's no further action. Maybe they decided that Ferrari's move satisfied whatever action they were going to have to do. Who knows? Then we talk about Williams. Alex Albon P5, Carlos Sainz P8. Williams, like Ferrari, split their strategy, boxing Carlos first and leaving Alex out. Alex ran as high as P3 after staying out during the early stop flurry, and then the virtual safety car timing kind of boosting his strategy, making it a lot more effective. He couldn't keep Oscar behind him, and he pitted behind the safety car, dropping behind Leclerc. But he had a great battle with Charles, forced wide into the gravel by Charles, and then losing a place to Hamilton in the process. That kind of stung. It's one thing to be forced off wide and come back and have another go, but being forced off wide and then losing that spot to Lewis. But Lewis was flying at that point. He secured P5. It's their best result. as Leclerc let him back pass. So he, am I right in that? Yeah, P5, I think that's right. And it's unfortunate because Alex said, honestly, I felt like a podium was possible if none of that had happened, because I feel like Oscar tires were old, mine were new. I felt like we could have reeled him in and maybe got to the podium.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Could have done.
Could have.
It was a great run. Competitive Williams. Wow.
Yeah. Who knew? And wasn't it fun seeing that old Williams v Ferrari battle like old days?
Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's good stuff. And Albon's doing a terrific job, as is Carlos Sainz, quite honestly.
Yeah.
This team just going strength to strength and really head and shoulders above seems the rest of the midfield. And I think a podium could have been possible for him.
Yeah.
All things going perfect for him, mind you, but definitely in there, which is something to say for sure.
Yeah. How did you see the actual incident? I think Ant Davidson said, technically the new rules are you have to have your front tire, what was it?
Ahead of the mirror.
Ahead of the mirror or whatever, yeah.
Yeah,
but he kind of felt
alongside.
Yeah, well, I think Ant said, look, as a pure driver, I think he was enough there, and Charles should have gave him room. But he said, technically, by the new rules, I think maybe Charles had the corner by the rules, but Ant didn't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was I think it was just a bit behind that rule, honestly.
Yeah.
But, so I think it was fine. I think he was enough, and I think Charles should have given him the room. But Charles, fighting for his position. I understand that side too.
Yeah.
The thing is, you do that, and you're not automatically saying, "Okay, I'm sending him off." I mean, you might be.
If you're
I'm not saying people don't do that, myself included. But he could. Also, it's an intimidation factor, and you're hoping that they'll back off.
Yeah.
Right? You say because we've seen it many times when there's Armco barriers. You're going through side, and he's got on the outside, and he's like, "Oh, okay," and I'll just tuck him behind. They have an option there that the defending driver offers them. Basically, you can stay there, you might go off, or you can back off and just tuck back in and try and get me another time. So,
right.
Albon has some choices too.
Yeah, true. Carlos down in P8 started P6, but the early pit stop strategy did not work for him, and he knew it. He basically told the team on the radio, if Alex's strategy is absolutely the right one, that's the one that will work.
Yeah.
He fought back to P8 after an early stop. I do feel like I definitely get the impression, although he was disappointed the weekend, he said clearly they had pace and he just isn't catching a break and the strategy didn't work for him. And I totally understand his point. I get it. But for me on the outside looking in, I do feel like Carlos is really starting to get settled in this team, get settled with that car and starting to develop and deliver some real results. Not reflected at Imola because I think the strategy was really not a great strategy, but I think he is looking much better.
Yeah, I mean, the strategy is you don't know what the future's going to hold, right?
No, you don't.
Some of these strategies would have worked if things have changed just a little bit. If the one full course yellow hadn't happened, if both of them had happened at different times, things change. And I think a lot of people, a few drivers at least, got caught in that shuffle and mess.
Yep.
And no fault of the team really, no fault of the driver. It just sometimes you throw a strategy out there and it can bite you or it can benefit you.
Yeah. I mean, no team sits down and say, okay, let's have the optimum strategy and then let's kind of have just another, just throw a dart at the board. I mean, both strategies those teams believe in depending on how the race unfolds. And, nobody was banking on a VSC and a safety car. So
right. I mean, some strategies, it just gives you more options or more, if there is something that happens and you can throw it out, but it might not be beneficial if nothing happens.
Yeah, and it's not that It's not that, because your team would do the same thing. And IMSA, you go to a track with a very high probability of safety cars. You're going to factor that into your strategy at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and these teams do the same. Let's see. Mercedes, George Russell, P7, Kimi Antonelli, a DNF. Unfortunately, George qualified P3, held P3 early, but used a lot of tire trying to fight with Lando and hold Lando off. He stopped early with several following him in. It kind of launched the whole initial pit stop phases. He got jumped by Leclerc with the stop, but then recovered a few places by not stopping into the safety car, which was prompted by his teammate Antonelli. He managed to hold on to P7 on older tires by not pitting into the safety car. But the weekend was difficult for George, and he said that he was, the race was challenging. He was struggling with some sort of rear axle issue. He said it was like trying to prevent it from overheating, according to him. So, he's obviously driving around a problem.
Yeah. And supposedly he was talking about it even before the race.
Yeah.
So there may be something they can look deeper into. Obviously, they tear these cars to pieces, so I'm sure if there is something, they'll find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was why it was interesting that they pitted Piastri to cover George, and I don't think we had enough pace for them to actually be worrying about them that early in the race.
Right.
But it was a struggle for them. Probably their worst race of the year, I guess, at this point, because George has been banging on the podiums and really getting some great points results.
Yeah, he's been Mr. Consistency, hasn't he?
Yeah. So
and to be down
the Georges, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either. I think he made the most out of what he had. But yeah, it was difficult having qualified so well. And even at the launch, I mean, he was right up side by side with Max, right behind Oscar.
And he was actually held up by Oscar.
He was held up by Oscar. Yeah.
Got on with the game, in that braking zone. I think they both would have been ahead of Max.
Yeah, I agree. Then Kimi, unfortunately, had great defending against Lewis Hamilton the first half of the race, putting him a pretty fierce defense on the world champion and showing a lot of promise at his home Grand Prix. So they thought, okay, he's holding Lewis off. He's thereabouts. He can try to claw up there, get close to George, finish in that fifth, sixth, third, fourth. But it seemed like after stopping for those mediums, Paul, that pace just disappeared. He was really struggling out there. Lewis got by him, and then he ultimately, I don't know if it was the mediums and the chassis that was difficult, or ultimately if it was whatever the issue is with the car that resulted in a DNF. He stopped out on track, and it could have been something that was slowly failing and not generating the power.
Right. Yeah, it's probably more likely that, I would think.
Yeah.
Although the compounds and everything was quite a story, I think, unto itself. Before the race, even in qualifying and in the race.
Yeah.
Degradation of what worked and where the pace was and how fast the pace went away. The hards seemed to last forever. The softs couldn't last half a lap. It was quite the disparity with the compounds and when you've seen that such bigger delta between all these compounds, think of how that then reapplies to all the different chassis and manufacturers and how they work with each tire.
Yeah.
Right. So that can really completely change the characteristic of the car when that gap is so large between the compounds, or the differential between the compounds is so much.
Yeah. It was a bit of a curveball, and the way that played out was interesting on the compounds. The RBs, Isaac Hadjar, P9, Liam Lawson, P14. Isaac secured P9, but was an easy run for him. He fell out of the top 10 early on, had to settle for the long game and really try to claw that back. At one point, though, he was running up in fifth, but the team kept him out for track position during the safety car. And like Leclerc, he was on older tires for the restart. And as I mentioned earlier, Charles said it's going to be really, really difficult to restart these hard compounds. And get him back up into the window. It's going to be really tough. Charles even thought he would finish in the points. He did, but I think Isaac had the same challenge that he was dealing with. So it cost him a lot of positions. One wonders if it wasn't a misstrategy call in the end, but he did manage P9. A terrific Q3 qualifying effort on Saturday. Very impressive. It makes one wonder if Red Bull isn't going to maybe pick up the phone and call Isaac at this point.
Stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
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 No, he's doing a great job. I think, sending him up there would ruin Isaac Hadjar.
It might.
Quite honestly.
Yeah.
I think he's showing a lot of promise, and for once in their lives, Red Bull don't need to destroy a driver's, psyche
Right.
by being too aggressive with them. So I think they need to leave him just there. He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
And getting up points, and which no one else on that team is doing. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of damaging a psyche, at Liam Lawson down in P14, truthfully, I wish I had more to report here, but he lost out in the qualifying due to the red flag. That meant it started way in the back. Wasn't able to make much ground. He got caught out by the virtual safety car periods. That hurt his chances to show any sort of pace that he might have had. It's tough because, I'm not quite sure what the struggle is there. I guess I understood it when he was at Red Bull because of the challenge that car is to drive, as evidenced by everyone who's sat in it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure what the challenge is here at RB because he's being comprehensively outpaced by Hadjar.
Yeah, I don't either, because that wasn't his MO when he first came into the team. He outshone Dan Ricciardo and his team and Yuki.
Yeah,
quite a bit. So yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, he's taken a beating, and maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But, we'll have to see. He definitely had the potential of doing really well in that car, and it's not really showing forth yet. But once again, the qualifying thing, not starting in the right place, maybe whether you could have earned, and the scenarios within this race can make you look terrible when you weren't necessarily doing terrible things.
Yeah. Maybe like Lando. It's just Saturdays are hurting him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso P11, Lance Stroll P15. Fernando qualified P5, forming the Spanish Armada third row with Carlos Sainz. So things were looking really good for him, and maybe even better for the team's upgrades. They brought a lot of upgrades this weekend. Mm-hmm. So after watching qualifying, I thought, ooh, and they had that sort of cheeky move of qualifying and making a Q3 on mediums, right? So they ended up using the mediums, which meant during the race they're going to be on used mediums, but they took that gamble on Saturday, which paid, it worked a treat, right? Got them up there. They had their new upgrades, so I thought Fernando looked buoyed by that. Unfortunately, they didn't box under the safety car late in the race, and they had no tires to box for, and so that dropped him back through the field, leaving Fernando with no points. And for Lance, there's really not much to talk about with Lance. Lance said the virtual safety car and safety car ruined their race.
Yeah.
And had that not happened, he felt like they could have stayed in the points. But, it's one of those things coming out of Saturday, I thought, whoa, Aston Martin's upgrades are working. Awesome. Great strategy on the mediums. Hopefully that won't bite them on Sunday. But in the reality, just drifted backwards. They were just out of the points by one position.
Yeah. Now, I thought Fernando got a fresher set of mediums for the end. That's why he started charging up. Because, charged right up to
I may have missed that. Yep.
Yeah.
I may have missed that.
I think it was looking good, but I think the DEG just wasn't enough, and by the time you got a few good laps under the mediums, then the hards was still a better tire to have.
Yeah,
because he did make up like 5 positions, I think, on the restart, but he couldn't quite get to Yuki. I think this was
yeah, you're right. They
definitely an opportunity lost.
Yeah, you're right.
I think it was definitely lost. Yeah, he just thought he was stuck. If you remember,
he was.
Got to get that little voice clip of him saying he's the most unluckiest driver in Formula One. That was nearly as bad as Lando's Jesus, but it was a good one. It was a good one. We need to find that one.
Yeah,
but so he thought he was completely lost, right? Because he didn't have an option. But the second safety car gave him that option of putting on those mediums if they were used or whatever. So I thought he was going to get there, but he didn't. But the car was better than the score shows, and the strategy probably put them there. But so I think it was a really positive weekend for Aston, but they just didn't get anything out of it. But hopefully what they learned and what they got out of these new upgrades is going to start at least pulling them off the back of the grid and desperation moves to get themselves in the points.
Yeah, I'm curious how those upgrades might react on a radically different circuit this weekend at Monaco.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that could be interesting. Sauber, Nico Hulkenberg, P12, Gabriel Bortoleto, P18. Nico looked like he might have a sniff at the points a few times. Started on the hards, ran long first stint, stopped medium during the virtual safety car. Tires wore down, just couldn't hang on to P10. A lot of quicker cars around him, didn't have the pace. Some fresher tires around him and pass him. But, he was almost there to celebrate their 600 race with a point, but didn't quite get there.
It would have been nice. It would have been
great.
Yeah. I mean, they're not looking as desperate or horrible as they have done in the past. And I think Nico's probably a big part of that. His teammate actually can show some pace, just maybe not in the races, just hasn't been able to put a race together. But Hulkenberg definitely is still driving very well, even though he's driving a car with less potential than he's driven recently. But even though those cars didn't have a ton of potential, but at least he could pull one out of a hat every now and again.
Yeah.
Unlikely to do that in the Sauber this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. And Gabriel said, he just couldn't make any progress from where he started in the back. It's unfortunate because he's the guy who holds the track record for F2 as far as being quick around this track. So he knows the track. And I was hoping that he would get in amongst them up there, with the other rookies and do well, but it didn't really work out for him, unfortunately.
No.
Speaking of not working out, Alpine, Pierre Gasly down to P13, Franco Colapinto P16. Pierre had a good start, making the most of his qualifying position. He got caught in that fight with Leclerc that saw him run off track. So he runs wide off track, bounces over the gravel, loses several positions. I'm not sure if there was any underside damage to that car. Despite having the virtual safety car and safety car periods, he never really could make any progress back up the field to P13 or anything beyond P13. So not a great weekend. I don't know about that incident. At first I thought they touched and he forced him off wide, but it looked like maybe after watching it a second time, like maybe he just carried too much speed into that corner and ran wide. Too much speed
for where there wasn't any grip. That's what it looked like to me. It was a two drivers battling it out, and he just was in the wrong place on the outside of a turn that maybe a little dusty or whatever, and just kind of took him off. He was brave to try and hold it out there, but unlikely move to come off.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. Tough weekend for Franco. He's a new driver for Alpine running. He had a crash on Saturday, tore the car up. He also on Sunday ran off, like Pierre. Ran off. He recovered, came back on. Safety cars sessions didn't really help him out that much. Like Pierre, he didn't have much success beyond P16. Tough. It's a tough ask. I mean, you're asking this young man to come back, jump into a seat, be on pace. Flavio said, I just asked him to go quick, don't wreck, and score points. As long as he does that, he'll be here a long time.
Yeah, he did none of those.
Like he did none of those. And it's tough because you come back and you got this triple header on radically different tracks, right? So, it's a tall ask for Franco. We'll see if he delivers.
It is, but it's the job he wants.
Yeah, this is it. It's put up or shut up, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, these days, as I've heard, it's like some of these new rookies like Hajar, et cetera, are excelling with very little time and experience. It's his second chance. I mean, he did a good job, but then in last year, but he did make a couple of big errors that caused some
Brazil comes to mind.
Damage. That was a big one.
Yeah,
that was a tough one though. But you definitely don't want to come out on your debut and destroy a car.
No.
So we know Doohan, probably has a wry smile behind the. Or maybe not behind anything. I don't know. I saw a couple of pictures, but I don't know. People can take things out of context for sure and use them to their ability. So I'm not going to comment on that at all. But it's a tough one. The hardest thing was that you heard that they changed their race engineer, and there's a couple other personnel different on that car.
I know.
So these people, I don't know where these people are coming from. If they're literally new hires to come into the team, so you got a new driver with a new crew who haven't worked together. I think that makes it really hard, and I'm trying to figure out why that happened.
Yeah.
Internally, that they're not just changing a driver swap; they're changing personnel, engineering that car as well.
I think there was some talk, and I don't know if this is, there's so much crap F1 sites now on pick your social media, on Facebook, on Twitter.
So much fake
news. So much fake F1 stuff out there. It's amazing. Yep. They've got all these
clickbait stuff,
supposed quotes, and they're not quotes, and this didn't happen. And I saw
about no shit headlines.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's like just a bunch of shit headlines.
It's a shame because you got a lot of people out there trying to have fun and cover Formula One, and then you got 10 times that amount and just fake crap on clickbait. But the reality of it is, there was some talk about the issue with Flavio not being an actual employee of the team, being a consultant, and couldn't perform in that role as a team boss. And David, was his name Greenwood, I think, was kind of being moved into that position because he is an employee. So, there's just so much tumult going on over at that team right now, It's bad.
It seems they're surprised by their own decisions half the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, Formula One are keeping Briatore out of the interview thing because God knows what he's going to say in those interviews nowadays.
Right.
I don't want to see that.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure. He'd probably say, "That's Flavio." Anyway, let's move on to Haas. Finally, bringing up the rear of the grid, Ollie Behrman P17. Esteban Ocon at DNF. Ollie had a tough race. Even looked like he might retire the car there for a second, but he stopped for a long stop. I want to say it was like a 30-second stop or something, but then...
Oh, wow. Okay.
I could have that wrong. I thought that's what it looked like, but that could have been like the total lap delta time. I don't know what I was looking at on the graphics, but it was a long stop. Then he came back out on track, languishing at the back of the grid, couldn't really make any progress. Esteban Ocon just looked like off the pace, and say what you will about Esteban, but he's not that slow. He's a fast driver, and there was clearly something he was struggling with this weekend. Not sure what it was, but started at the back of the grid. Then immediately the team called him and said, "Retire the car. Game over." Very tough weekend for Haas.
Yeah, tough weekend for them for sure.
They had their new motorhome too.
Did they?
Yeah, it was fancy.
Maybe that's their problem.
Maybe it is.
They're too busy lounging around in the motorhome when they should be getting back to work.
Drinking umbrella drinks.
Yeah. Tighten that bolt, for crying out loud.
Right. Yeah. Williams had a fluid leak right before the race, and they managed to fix that. What were you doing with Esteban's car? No, Esteban, I feel bad for him. He's a quicker driver than that, and I felt like
for
just
sure.
that DNF right off the straight, that was bad. And Ollie's doing a great job this year, so if he's down to P17, this was definitely not a it's just not a friendly track.
Not friendly
Not friendly at all to Haas. So there you go.
They move on. Luckily, there's another race right around the corner.
Yes, Monaco, as you might call it, Paul. No, you don't call it that. And you also don't say
controversy.
You don't say that either.
Not anymore. I used to, though.
Did you? Did you say? Did you used to pronounce it controversy like a good Brit?
Yes.
Good for you. Good for you.
It's all gone.
We've ruined you.
It's all gone, but
we've ruined
it's gradually fading away.
I know. We've ruined you over here. Have you stopped dropping the U's in your color and behavior?
No, and I use a Y entire. I just keep trying to hold on to the
clinging on to your
my
Britishness.
Yeah, clinging on.
Yeah.
Yep, I do.
Yeah. I'm English, damn it.
Luckily, with all the Aston Martin people around us, half our crew is English.
Right, they're all English. That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, did you see Arsenal got one over Newcastle? They're in the Champions. Yeah, got that.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. How'd West Ham do? Wow. They won this weekend.
No, they lost.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they won.
But they still beat Man United and Tottenham in the standings.
Oh, good. Well, Tottenham
because they lost less than they did. Yes, yes.
You're not a Tottenham fan, are you?
No, I'm not a Tottenham fan either.
Yeah.
Tottenham or Arsenal? No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. A little Premier League talk for you.
Mm-hmm.
Good fun. Let's hand out some awards, shall we?
Okay.
All right, why not? We typically hand out 3 awards for every race review, and the first award we always hand out is Move of the Race. Paul, what'd you get? Move of the Race.
I mean, you had to give it to Max, right?
You do.
Slam dunk.
Turn
it
1.
Makes a massive difference for the rest of the race, and certainly for Max.
Yeah, it does. It does. I'll be very curious. And we know going into Monaco, qualifying is king. I suspect McLaren to be on top of that, but I'm very curious. What I'm curious, Paul, is Red Bull, have they solved a lot of that tire issue over the long run race pace? That's the key, because in this Grand Prix, they didn't have to worry about it. They clearly looked as if they had solved that. Like they got. Remember, I was talking about. I think in the last podcast, I was talking about McLaren's ability. You and I have talked about this, and a lot has been said about water, and then they're using a special material internally, and then this weekend they were talking about no, what it is like a 2-way brake duct where it's bringing in cold air, but it also manages to exhaust all the hot air, and it's like a dual brake duct, like a dual diffuser, but a dual brake duct, and that's what Sky was talking about this weekend. That's the trick. What Christian said after the race was that they were able during this race to get the car's tire to the peak performance window and then keep it in that window. Now, you could just be saying that tactically, right? But that's the point, because that's what McLaren's been able to do all year long, is get in that window, and with whatever brake duct, cooling, whatever they're doing, they've been able to get that tire in the window and just keep it there for the race. And that makes their race pace outstanding. Well, that's what Max did this weekend. So I'm curious now if they've solved it, if this was track specific, and then what impact Monaco might have, which is a radical difference.
I mean, you could solve it for one track. Every track has its own approaches you need to take for that same job, right? It's not like one answer does not fix all.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So we will see it. I don't know what's going to happen in Monaco. So it's a tough one. Although I scored the most points in our fantasy league.
Did you? I blew it.
I was P1, baby.
Really? I totally blew it.
Yeah.
I probably sank to the back. I had, for the fantasy GP picks, I had Oscar winning, Lando second, Max third. So I got Lando second, but
you got Lando, I keep going thinking Lando's gonna.
I do too.
He has to do it, so he's gonna do it, and I've missed out every time. And
oh wait,
I don't know. I feel like I'm doubting Piastri.
I just lied to you. I think I had Lando recovering and winning Oscar second, so I don't think I got anything.
Yeah,
it's terrible.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
I keep thinking Lando is gonna okay. All right, put his foot down.
It's got to happen, right?
Yeah. It's like,
and he just hasn't done it yet.
And he hadn't done it yet. I keep thinking he's going to come back at Oscar, or whatever. But Oscar,
this is the week.
This is my weekend, and Oscar is just a cool customer. He's a sharp cookie. Yeah. He's hooking it up. And,
yes, he is.
And I'm excited for him. I'm really excited for Oscar.
Underestimate the Oscar.
No, you can't. All right. Well, then we like to give the next award for Donkey of the Race. Yes. It's an unfortunate award, but it has to be handed out. Paul, who'd you give it to?
I had Aston and Merck down as potentials, and I just changed it to Yuki.
Okay. A last-minute change.
Last-minute change to Yuki for...
Okay. Balling it up on Saturday.
Balling it up. I mean, he made it up to 10th, but man, you gotta pull back a little bit.
Be better.
And focus on you driving that car and getting the best out of it rather than chasing Max Verstappen.
Yeah. Good call.
Which I think is what led to that. Yeah.
I had Alpine. I just kind of
Yep.
feel like that whole thing right now is a bit of a dumpster fire, and that can't be
is.
can't be working well.
Well, it is French after all.
Oui. This team has a certain je ne sais quoi. I don't know. I just feel terrible by all of this, and I feel bad for Franco. Doesn't want to crash, of course he doesn't. And he's a quick, he's a quick young man, and he's got a great fan base. And I feel bad for him that's kind of how his debut went. Feel bad for Pierre because I think Pierre's trying to, do everything he can. I mean, if anybody has a right to say, it's Pierre at this point, right?
Right.
I feel bad for him because I think Pierre has the chops.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a very quick driver. I think if he was in a quick car, he'd be doing a lot better. But anyway, it's unfortunate. All right. Well, then we only have one award left.
It's in Lewis.
Oh, yeah.
You like my bass? You like it?
Yes. Drive of the race. Who'd you give it to?
I'm getting it to Mr. Albon
That's a great
of
shout.
the Cat fame.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought he did a great, solid job. He's duking it out with the top flight teams. Yeah.
How
very
great!
Nice job,
How
Alex.
great is that? To see Williams in this brief, we talk about the evolution of teams, and if you've been watching Formula One for a long time, you know this. Teams go through these cycles. Mercedes had the longest cycle known to man, but they go through these periods, and we're starting to see Williams start to make these progressions, just ever so, just like Red Bull was during the McLaren or Mercedes domination. These teams, just like McLaren has been with Red Bull, making these advances, and it's great to see Williams doing so well. And Alex had a great drive. Great drive.
Yep.
I think it's hard for me not to pick Max. That's an amazing job. Turn
It was
one,
an amazing job.
pulled out, a good gap, managed those tires, the entire thing with all the troubles they've had, all the way to this race. For him to be able to pull that off, I thought was really impressive.
Yeah, it was a spectacular drive. Yep.
It was. All right. Well, that's what we think the award winners are, and that's also what we think about this race, but you can tell us what you think about this race. You can go to our website, theparkforme.com, share your opinion. Also, a huge thank you to all of our supporters and Patreon supporters out there, and our individual supporters out there. We could not and would not do this podcast without you, so thank you so much. Be sure to check out our new merch. And would love for you
stuff.
if you feel like supporting us to the next race you go to, it's out there. It's good stuff. It's not quite as cool as your Aston Martin shirt, but
I know. See, everyone kept asking for years about merch, and now we finally got stuff rolling out.
See, guys, you've been asking for harder racing merch, and there it is. He's wearing it. You have to go to YouTube to see it.
Now.
Get your get your Hannah T-shirt now. Absolutely, that's good stuff.
They're getting kind of famous. People are bringing the shirts and the girls
Sign
are signing
it?
it.
That's
stuff.
great.
It's awesome.
That's great for Hannah's. That's great. Well, anyway, check us out there, and if you like the podcast, share it. Tell somebody about it. Start spreading the news out there. We'd appreciate that. But Paul and I'll be back next week because we're going to be reviewing the Monaco Grand Prix, and that's pretty darned exciting.
Racing weekend.
It is a big racing. I just love Monaco. I don't know what it is, but it's great.
I know. I don't have a race, so I can focus on my Monaco Indy Classic weekend on Sunday, so.
Maybe Paul will write the podcast notes next week. He has so much time. Well, yours would be accurate. I had the wrong.
Might as well just be chalk drawings.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't get Fernando Alonso's pit stop strategy right for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Well, until next week when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.